and final session of the River-centric Film Festival organized by Talking Films Online. This group was formed on June 2nd, 2020, during the lockdown when most of us were watching a lot more films than we normally do. Today, as I said, we have come to the final session of this festival, curated by Indra Sankar Ghatak, who has also been initiating the discussion every Saturday of September. Indra is a research scholar at the School of Humanities and Social Sciences, IIT Mandi. He has been a teaching assistant at IIT Kharagpur and IIT Mandi. He has participated and presented papers in several national and international conferences. He's also a sports enthusiast, a singer, and a published poet. Welcome to all of you, and over to you, Indra.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. So we are here for the last discussion on the Art Film Festival. And so the film for today is Hkhagoroloi Bohu. It's an Assamese film by Janu Borua. And I would begin my today's talk by the very same words that I had used, my own words that I had used in the very first session of this Art Film Festival, to recall and recollect what we have, or what I wanted to portray through these films. And we have had some riveting discussions and very nice conversations, and hoping to end the Art Film Festival on a positive note. So the Art Film Festival tries to focus on these few art films. Ones we have already done are Podda Nodir Maji, Tita Shekti Nodir Nam, Bishorjon, and Hkhagoroloi Bohu, which recount how subaltern people are inadequately represented in mainstream cinema. The paper argues that the popular film industry does not include these artworks, showcasing the dehumanized communities of boatmen, ferrymen, fishermen, laborers, etc. These are dumped into the category of art films and are barred from the popular motion pictures that aggregate into the grand narratives of history writing. In the aforementioned films, the river acts as an agent of encoding and eraser, displacing the actual selves of main characters. And as we had discussed, like how Kuber decides to enhance his boatman status from his village and family to escape to the utopian Moinadi. We had also discussed and examined the ostracized Malos, who are excommunicated from the life at the center and are dispossessed of their lands when the pangs of river Titash consume parts of their villages. We have also seen how Nasir Ali and Podda are seen as expatriates in a land of their origin, religion, and language. And lastly, we come to the protagonist of this film, Puol, who loses his identity and livelihood as a boatman once the bridge is built in his village. So the art films what I have tried to argue is that they act as guardians of memory as they try to replant or naturalize these evicted people amidst the dwindling light of mainstream memory. Hence, in a digital age, it becomes apparent to carve out spaces for these narratives and genres which are presented only as figments of memory for capitalists and bourgeois consumers of cinema. Therefore, through these films, memories resurface to position such narratives in the variegated representations of popular culture. It is important to narrate these tales of exclusion to bring into focus the fault lines of the historiography of filmmaking. Yeah. So what I had used as a lens is these two thinkers, Maurice Holbrook and the art historian A.B. Warburg, and their main argument that I had taken for these films to examine was that they had developed two theories of collective or social memory. They unite these into a categorical rejection of the notion that collective memory can be biologically explained as an inherited or racial memory. So this is how I had come to the examination or analysis of the art films that offers a glimpse to the conception, the interpretation, and dissemination of knowledge about the underprivileged. So the film for today is an Assamese movie that illustrates how a modern mode of transportation, in this case, a bridge, can distort the identity of a generational boatman and ferryman in rural Assam. According to the film critic Anna M. Betikad, who had written an article on 29 September 2020 regarding Janu Borua, and I quote, Janu Borua's Hkhagoroloi Bohu is an indictment of cold-hearted development. There were festivals and other cultural hotspots to choose from, even though Delhi's theaters continued to show only Hindi and English films. That's how I first got a glimpse of rural Assam in the mid-90s at a festival of Northeast films at Delhi's India International Center, thanks to the writer-director Janu Borua's Hkhagoroloi Bohu, which is translated as It's a Long Way to the Sea. So people could access previously unexplored land, spaces, lived experiences through these art films. So these art films are a lamppost that shows us how narratives of subjugation are forgotten. Consequently, it becomes necessary to create spaces and memories of people who are typically treated as the other in a digital age like this. Hkhagoroloi's Bohu. Yeah, sorry, I was disconnected.
Yeah, okay, okay, please go ahead.
Yeah. So consequently, it becomes necessary to create spaces for the memories of these people, these underprivileged people who are typically treated as the other in a digital age like this one. And Hkhagoroloi's Bahudur's aversion is to apathy and not advancement, the technological advancement. I mean, there is kind of apathy for it, and it is particularly shown through the character of Puol. By coincidence, this interpretation echoes Borua's intended message, and I quote: "This was something that recalls, and Borua had given her this a phone call from Guwahati, reiterating the movie's central thesis after patiently repeating it for 25 years. That's what he had said. And I quote, any process of development is not completely useless unless the problems of the victim are accommodated and all within the system. So once built in his village, Paul loses his livelihood and what it means.
I think we are having a problem with Indra's audio.
I think he's got disconnected. There he is.
Yes.
Yeah. Indra, you could try to switch off your video if that will help or save bandwidth. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So once a village, once a bridge is built in his village, Hua loses his livelihood and what it actually means for him. So what this boatman status actually means for him. Probably he is not going to lose the status of a boatman per se, because everyone in his village has seen only this one person always ferrying them from this part to the other. And probably he will still be called a boatman. But when this bridge is starting to come up, he is actually losing his livelihood and what it actually stands for him, the status and the position of respectability, and also recalling his the character's words, like his ancestry had also been in this livelihood, and the respect that he surely wants to get. So hence we see all the rage that comes through when the bridge was being built and he tries to demolish it. So the protagonist of Hkhagoroloi Bohudur is an elderly boatman who ferries locals across the river that passes by their village in order to make a living. Puol, played by Vishnu Khargoria, has a son and a daughter-in-law who are uncaring and who live in Guwahati with their two kids. He cares deeply for his adopted grandson, Kumon, who is played by Shushanto Borua, who resides with him. Paul, however, is adamant that he will be the last boatman in their family, unaware that circumstances will soon compel him to hang up his oars. He tells Kumon, "You have to study and be a respectable man one day." The villagers are thrilled to hear that a bridge is being built across the river, and nobody worries about how Paul will cope with his ensuing unemployment. The film's inspiration from my readings comes that Borua, to Borua, it came from the memory of his early years. When he was young, Borua loved to go fishing in the nearby river with his father, who worked as a factory manager at an Assam tea estate. On these excursions, he would observe factory workers using boats to cross the river. He drew from his memory bank for a scene that had stuck with him decades later when he started making movies. That is, here the struggles of the boatman as a bridge is built over the river. Borua remembers, and I quote, "I could feel his pain back then." So, in my opinion, the river here serves as the only constant in Paul's universe. It is both the source of sustenance and a destroyer of life. It provides Paul with his daily bread at the beginning of this story, but it was also a natural force that had once sucked up Kumon's parents as well. The river is also the ever-flowing body of water that continues even after the bridge rises and Paul's boat appears to be rendered useless. Here I would again come back to my basic argument that I wanted to look through the lens of the memory. So we also get to see how culture holds immense knowledge, and the various songs or the various folklores that are used in this film, not so pertinently as one sees in Tita Shekti Nodir Naam or Podda Nodir Machi, but we see that in this case we take it is like a case study where a meager villager or a boatman from a village is actually eking out his livelihood and living on the memory of his ancestry and his respectability in the river Brahmaputra. So we have to understand that memories are brought to the surface through this film so that narratives can be positioned among the abundance of popular culture. The horizon of cultural memory is unchanging over time and is fixed. And this kind of rituals or the kind of poetry or the pictures that we see are some of the common forms that aid to the cultural memory. Hence, therefore, cultural memory in this film as well, I would say, that functions by reconstructing, which means it always connects its knowledge to a real world circumstance. So both the interpretation and creation as part of this creation of the film is a kind of intertextuality that is there. It is a kind of intertextuality where there is a reader, a viewer, a listener when the receiver is already familiar with the text. So this kind of continuous dialogical process that goes on. And this kind of dialogical process is something the audience is experiencing, and it is a kind of connection between particular works, like some of like this particular works, that is the underprivileged villagers or countrymen or people from the lower sections of the society, and it connects us to a larger cultural system that goes on around Brahmaputro. Yeah. So it is this kind of film serves this purpose in the larger dimension of visual history. The pleasure of accessibility, which motivates both its commercialization and its use in education, contrasts sharply with the elitist or enriching appeal of adaptation. This elitist or enriching appeal of adaptation contrast is something which is, if we consider that if a work that is being adapted for film from a story or a narrative is a canonical one, we might not actually be familiar with it personally, but may instead be relying on generally circulated cultural memory. This film, this kind of knowingness of the audience of adaptation includes not only knowledge of specific adapted texts or a specific adapted region or space or waters or communities within that alongside that river. It also produces knowledge related to cultural, a new kind of cultural affinity. There is social structures which are broken and rebuilt. There is a kind of intellectual rumination, and there are kind of aesthetic aspects to this. So the individuality of Puol in the film merge with a communal consciousness here of the lower sections of the society, where community life or communitarian life is something which has to be seen in a very holistic kind of manner, and this actually comes through the film Hkhagoroloi Bohu. So again, another instance of when I was reading this article of Annaya Memvetikar, she had questioned the director about whether what are the circumstances regarding the people in cities because of the episode that happens in the city life in Guwahati. So people become victims. So Janu Borua had claimed that people become victims of the circumstances they find themselves in, and behave in ways that may not even be aware are wrong or illegal, depending on how an innocent situation like the village might view them. However, doesn't this belief unintentionally romanticize villages while shielding city dwellers or urbanites, such as Hemonto, who is the son of Puol in Guwahati, from accountability of their own actions? This is one question that arises, and it is actually something very paradoxical that comes through. So when the film we see the film, there is a kind of portrayal of the character of Hemonto and his wife and their children, and this kind of claim of Borua also comes as a kind of one kind of ambiguity that we need to bear in mind. So this is something which makes us question or the accountability of his actions. Yeah. So an illustrated example again could be from Borua's plot, where he depicts the gap between urban and rural areas, as well as the tranquility of the village, where stormy waters churn beneath the idyllic surface, although the story's most overt message is about heartless development that disregards people and replaces them with machines and bridges. In urban areas, Borua asserts that he is not generalizing, and that within the system, there are people who are very human and living honestly as well. So this is another comment that brings us to the ambiguity of what is portrayed in the film and what Borua actually proposes in his various talks. Yeah. So we have to understand that this kind of film again pokes our cultural memory in a reflective way, It explains commonplace behavior in terms of proverbs, maxims, and ethno-theories or rituals, to use Pierre Bourdieu's term. It is also self-reflexive in that it looks inward to clarify, to distinguish, reinterpret, criticize, and censure. And it reflects the group's self-image through the character of Paul, maybe. We kind of imagine a group that kind of faces these similar characteristics or similar mental trauma or loss of livelihood and what it means to them. So this is done through the focus. As a result, these art films, which I have discussed, again comes to this very version of mind that they are patterns of cultural memory, which refer to the group of reusable texts, images, and rituals that are particular to each society and each era, and whose cultivation serves to preserve and transmit that society's self-image. So this is where I would like to stop my talk, and I would very well like for a discussion on the film, on the intricacies that we have witnessed, some of the riveting facts. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Indro, for opening out several strands of the film. I was just wondering if you would want to say something about the portrayal of the child, because I think that was the most beautiful part of the film for me, the grandfather-grandson relationship. And also, if we look at another film of Janu Barua, the English translation is The Catastrophe. I don't want to mispronounce. I think Jyotirmoy will be able to tell us the Assamese name. Even in that film, it's the child, who is wise and who tells the father, not to tear up the posters of that corrupt, because they're sticking posters all over the town. That is also a film that we had discussed on TFO. It was the discussion was led by Parthojit Barua, and I think Barua's films uphold that Wordsworthian notion, of child as father of man. Even here in that very violent scene in the end, when he takes that axe and is trying to, break the pillar on which the bridge is standing, it's the child who stops him from doing that and tells him it's okay, let's go back home and cool off. So I thought that was a very interesting part of the film. And somehow to me, that urban rural stereotypes, I thought the binary was too sharp, and it did come across as the cruel urban dweller and the innocent villager. It's now open for discussion. Anyone else would like to come in?
Yeah. So I would like to comment.
Yeah, please.
Some comments
yes,
of mine. Yeah. Definitely, the child is a very important figure in this film. And one thing that I felt is Paul is one character who is looking back, maybe, and the child is one character who is looking forward. So the scene that we see of the child Kumon asking about where is the sea, that part also is something that is looking forward. He even wants to know whether he can be that person, if he would be able to see the sea, and that very thing fascinates, like a generational gap maybe between the grandfather and the grandson. And this is very well depicted in the cinematographic representation is one thing that I feel. Moreover, if we consider we consider the name of the film, if we consider the translation, it's a long way to the sea. So it may be a long way to the sea for Puol, who has more or less given up, or more or less has seen a lot of life, who has had his share of griefs, and probably for Kumon, it is a long way to the sea, in that sense that it is not very far. It is a long way, yes, but that may be achievable. So this is one dichotomy, or one thing that comes to my mind. And although the grandfather is always worried about the child's care, and he becomes his sole shelter, in his utter emotional distress also, he does trust that mere child to understand what he was going through, especially through the scenes when the bridge was being built, and that rainy, stormy seasons, stormy scene of the film. And this probably quite beautifully manifests what you had called that the child is the father of man. One more important thing that comes to my mind regarding this quote, this Wordsworthian quote, is that we have to remember that it was romanticism, and what romanticism means basically is yearning for the past. So in that sense, this is looking backward is also looking forward for me, and you are churning up those avenues of your maybe not so successful adventures or endeavors, and it is portrayed very positively or enthusiastically through the eyes of that child. So this is one thing that is actually, because the child has obviously had a traumatic past, and he did not have his parents, lived in misery, not so much, obviously very remote place, and he's out of place in Guwahati amongst his cousins. And this actually, but still having gone through all that, he is probably unfazed, or probably is so much aware of his position or standing in his life, that that is probably shown through how he is optimistic about life. Well, I would say that I have not seen that film, Catastrophe. If you are like, I have seen this film, Konike Ramdhanu, that is a ride on the rainbow, where another child figure features is Kukoi. He's also like 11-year-old who runs away from his village, and then there is a murder. There is this molestation on Kukoi, but the way the boy there also is traumatized and sent to this juvenile home, yet upon his release and getting back on his own ways, he tries to build a life again from the scratch, maybe something very optimistic. The message is very optimistic, although the tone and the somber way in which it is portrayed, or the in the concluding parts of the films, it is I feel that Borua is very optimistic about life, and optimistic about life of people from the lower sections of the society, and particularly people living in and around the Brahmaputra river basin. Yeah, so these are some of the observations that I have felt. I would definitely want to know what others feel. Thank you.
Thank you, Indra. Thank you. Yeah. Jyotirmoy, you have unmuted. Would you like to speak? Yes, Nikhila, please go ahead.
No, one had to say that Jyotirmoy's mic is not connected, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. But in terms of my response to the film, I was thinking of two things. I had watched his film, Janu Barua's film, Aparupa. I think it was his first film, 1982. And then this is, I think, 1995. So I was just wondering, how different the modern woman, seems to be coming across, these two time periods. In Aparupa, he builds this whole, there's so much empathy, understanding, and this whole justification for the way, Aparupa feels, not judgmental, a very a kind of modernist look at the woman, right? So, in terms of affirmation of her individuality, affirmation of, her selfhood, and things like that. And as a contrast, here in Guwahati, the way in which the daughter-in-law is kind of, this sound looks almost like, a daughter-in-law from a melodrama, so who's nagging, and there's so much. One, of course, we can understand it from the way in which your the discussion went so far, the valorizing of the village as opposed to the city, but also how the woman is the symbol of greater corruption, so to speak, over there. Who does not, respect the father-in-law, who's avaricious, and, all kinds of things. So I was quite struck by the difference between his portrayal of woman in Aparupa and in this film. The second is the climax, where in some ways one is expecting him to do something really drastic towards the end. And he's stopped by the child, and then he says, okay, I will pursue something else, some other occupation, and bring you up. So in some ways, when that happens, those are kind of narrative, a dip for me in the narrative, as if, he did not want to end it on a violent note or whatever. So it seemed so pointless that you go through all this, you kind of build up the high drama, and then suddenly something like this is happening. So I was a little, so the narrative resolution was not entirely convincing to me. So these are the two things that I had to say. Thank you. Thank you for asking us to watch the film, Indro, and for all that you've done for TFO this week. Thank you very much.
Indro, would you like to respond?
Yeah, I would. Thank you, ma'am, for the kind words. One thing, the second part of the question, the narrative resolution being not so tight, I would say. This one thing I had also felt like, why was the boy suddenly looking towards the river and the sunset, and definitely asking for the sea, because the sea had not featured anywhere in the film, and why would because it was not mentioned as well. So probably, I don't know how, probably there is a character development of the child who is definitely shown to be matured in such a short phase of time, or maybe it was Borua's own self-affirmation, or a kind of message that he wanted to give to the larger audience. This one thing that I had felt in this. Coming to the question of the modern woman, definitely the daughter-in-law in Guwahati is shown as someone who is modeled upon, who is looked down upon. Like, the portrayal is very very shabby, but it also is a realist frame that we need to bear in mind that there are different kinds of human beings, and probably Porua wanted to juxtapose Aparupa to this woman and say that there are various women figures present. And why talk of Aparupa when we have seen the characters of Kopila and and as well as a woman, and those two are not to be used in the framework of modern women, because the narrative takes place in around 1940s and 50s. But this one, Bodda as the epitome, so the person who is full of life and blood and everything, and her self-esteem and her desires, which are suppressed or repressed, it comes to the fore. And these things are obviously are there definitely. One more important comment that I would like to make on the urban-rural dichotomy is something related to this Gandhian and Nehruvian ambiguity in the movie, I feel. So the criticism of the urban-centric development is obviously Gandhian, and the criticism is against the Nehruvian model that focuses on urbanization. The criticism is also noticeable in how the grandfather first wants to admit the child to a city school, but the child says, like, retorts like, "Amader gramer school ki problem?" So what is problem? What problem does it have when I study in a village school? So this obvious developmental error, where urban schools are better than rural, this kind of dialectical kind of binaries are placed in this movie, which is definitely I feel kind of narrowing the narrative. But despite the criticism, the character of Paul still sees education as the only way for his family and his grandson to come out of their poverty and misery. That is why he claims that you have to be educated. And I gave that quotation. So the ambiguity in holding on to an idealism is present in this character of Paul. And probably the sea, the symbol of sea, is something that the grandfather is trying to get out of their small world and explore what lies beyond their Brahmaputra basin. And this is an aim for a bigger world for his grandson. These are some of the things that I felt, and definitely it raises the question of the end. And I would definitely want more comments on the end, and why is it pointless, or is it optimistic, or is it too far-fetched? So this is what I want to know from others as well.
Thank you, Indra. Any comments? Jayanto, Sanjay, Ajanta, Sridhar, any comments? Any questions? No, nothing? Yeah, Ajanta, please go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, so this is just kind of filling time while the others gather their thoughts. So first, I want to thank Indra for this fantastic selection of films and for the many, many interesting points he has raised, So because we are now working Saturdays, I haven't had time to give it a great deal of thought, but immediately when I was watching it yesterday, one of my favorite all-time books, is Raymond Williams' The Country and the City. So I was immediately reminded of this book, but also exactly as all of you have, kind of pointed out, there's the concluding chapters of that book and how this film concludes. And that entire trajectory of therefore what quote unquote development means in the global south. And these are just I don't know if you find these kind of comments useful or not, but so one of the great contradictions between people's history writing, and Indra has pointed out so beautifully about how these films in some ways retain subaltern memories, right? And so one of the great things that many of the subaltern historians have pointed out is that in the West, in some ways, development almost inevitably it's pre-programmed that the farming classes, the agricultural community, the riverine communities would, by definition, benignly be accommodated into the city. One of the major differences is that, of course, in terms of primitive accumulation, that does not actually happen. So to me, for the end is not so much of a letdown, but a huge kind of, the philosophical burden. Yes, there are lots of cliches in the film, but really, in a sense, because for us, and that's the living reality. And of course, today with neoliberalism taking its horrendous form, and we've seen what that meant, and the migrant crisis, etc. So there's a whole underclass that I'm not sure are any way or any more can look to the city as a means of escape. And in the village, obviously, their livelihoods have dried up. So the point I was making is, the Raymond films book takes a different trajectory, and as opposed to the Janu Borua film. And to me, the end was precisely it's not well worked out. And I'm not sure if my argument even stands, but it's because for us, development can, in the way in which things have panned out, one cannot be in the same. So farming remains, these communities remain, but also therefore other kinds of possibilities might or might not emerge. And I'm thinking of this formulation of political society. I don't know how much it works. And of course, through the pandemic, the political space has been shrunk even so much more. Possibilities of mobilization are also non-existent. But the ending for me was actually, in some ways, hugely loaded. It was badly done cinematically, not developed narratively, but possibilities remain. I don't know if any of you, that's Indra, Nikhila, you would like to comment on my thoughts. Thanks.
Thank you, Ajanta. Yes, Indra, would you like to respond? Indra, are you there?
Yes, ma'am. I'm
Yeah.
here.
Okay.
I'm just thinking about the point.
Sure.
Yeah.
Ajanta, I was wondering if the concluding scene of the film somewhere pointed out to the inevitability of, modernization or the kind of development that happens in any society. In our own lifetime, we have seen how certain occupations, have just ended. So there is an element of inevitability to, to the coming of the bridge and the going away of the boatman's occupation. So maybe when he ended it that way, probably he was pointing to this inevitability of it. I don't know. I mean, I'm just saying it as you.
Thank you, Geeta. Sure, absolutely. What struck me was, you're right. In some ways, it does seem inevitable. But so for instance, for somebody like Ronajit Bohu, the the fact that gods, etc., remain in the world of the underclass today is not a marker of the pre-political. And that's the difference between Ranjit Bohu and E.P. Thompson, as they write history of the working class. For Ranjit Bohu, it's precisely from that he reconstructs the fact that development here is taking a different trajectory. And we don't yet know how to think about it because the story of capital in the East will follow a different trajectory from that of the West. It's going to be extremely tortured. And the ways in which the political script, the idea of liberalism itself is going to be rewritten, we do not quite know. And they will, in a sense, challenge two basic precepts, that is law and property rights. So what the elderly boatman will do in future, we do not know. All I'm suggesting is that, when he says, I will do something else, we don't know what that something else is. We don't even know if that's a plausible answer. But it's just, and I'm kind of, juxtaposing theories that came 30 years later. But they're talking still about what does development actually mean, and how this very torturous process, of course, comes at tremendous cost, but might also have possibilities that Western Europe has not seen. And in a sense, I keep harking back to the Subaltern Project because they're telling us that in some ways we're also rewriting the script. So it's not all pessimistic. There could be possibilities that the West has, and of course the West has not conceptualized, because the trajectory there, that's a trajectory we know. The trajectory here is uncertain. We do not know how it's going to pan out, but we cannot therefore foreclose that it's going to be a bitter and sad end. I don't know if that sounds very, very optimistic or not.
Yes, Nikhila, please go ahead.
I just, again, I'm thinking as I speak, so I don't know how coherent it will sound. But again, this question of development, there are quite a number of films, with protagonists like the boatmen, who are the ones who have to pay the price for development. The film really is about, raises questions like this film does. What happens, to people like these? And here you have this entire system which does not want to take cognizance of the loss of livelihood. He goes there pleading, let me get a watchman's job, watchman of the bridge and things like that, or you give me some other job in lieu of what I have lost. And it's, and he's just turned away. So this question of what happens to those, let's say when you're building a road and, you lose your lands, what happens to you? It's not just about the compensation, it's also about the loss of livelihood. So development at what cost certainly is a question. My point was, I think, somewhat at a more simpler level. I was just saying that, for this figure of the boatman to emerge as a tragic figure, I don't know if towards the end we see the tragedy of his loss, both of his profession. Boats are no longer required once the bridge is made, and also the loss of any kind of self-worth. Whatever he felt proud about doing, it's not available anymore for him. Felt proud about doing, or felt was the only thing that he could do. Maybe he doesn't want his grandson to continue with it. So I was just making this very limited point that it doesn't seem like it's a tragic loss. It's something momentous, because it very tamely says, okay, I look for something else, So if it was, as Geeta said, at one level, it is about the inevitability, the march of development, and people like the boatmen who fall by the wayside in this march of development. But if we are to see and understand the momentousness of that tragedy, and if this film is to move us, I don't know, at least, sorry, it didn't seem like, it was pushing us to see this as tragic. It just seemed as individual obstinacy at one level, which could not reconcile himself to the changes. I don't think, that makes for, good resistance. So I was just thinking about some of these questions. Thank you. Thank you, Ajanta. And, thank you, Geeta. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Nikhila. Any more questions? Any more arguments? Comments?
Yeah. Extending what Nikhila ma'am said, like I feel that this moment it is more of an identity crisis probably for Puol. It is more than obviously projecting that through this kind of situation, this momentous situations cinematically is one thing, and because why I say this is when Paul gets drunk and says that he has realized nobody loves him and that everybody was using him for his services. So he was basically associating his identity and his need for intimate affection from his passengers, that is the villagers or the ferrymen that he knows. So it is evident in the fact that when a passenger comes back to on the next day, he's obviously being affectionate and trying to ask, and so this actually gets his identity probably going. Uh, he asks that, like, why passengers, why he didn't inform that he was not going to come back the other day, the same day. So he was wondering and says that he gets worried if a villager doesn't return. So these are kind of things that some of the dialogues that come to my mind regarding this. Definitely commenting on again on the title of the film, that I feel is it also suggests, as I brought up the models of Gandhi and Nehru, so I'll bring that up again. Like the title somewhat suggests a criticism of the Nehruvian model of urbanization. Maybe it's a kind of criticism, is a soft criticism that he probably brings, and definitely what Ajanta ma'am had also commented about the dichotomy of the country and the city, and how Raymond Williams actually talks about how we need to trace historically and critically the various forms of ideas, and this dualistic basically the book also rejects this simplistic dualistic explanation that city is evil and that everyone other than that in the countryside are in search of peace and harmony, which was the romantic or the Wordsworthian kind of narrative in the years of early 1800s. But one thing is that there is this there are knowable communities from both the villages and the cities, and there is the structure of feeling, and these both these places, this organization of the society is kind of there's this intrinsic one kind of it's a kind of single tradition probably, and both are kind of possibly working within a cooperative framework that actually gives them what their identity means to them, and it is definitely not something that is to be studied in isolation. So the ocean being is far also means that the dream of the ideal end goal of the Nehruvian model is far, far away because of the obvious unpreparedness that a country as a unit of its people to adopt that model which comes up, which is the bridge. So these kind of, so through the bridge and through the sun, the corruption is of the character is manifested, and it recurs continuously that the bridge would break, but it doesn't till the end, where even in the stormy night, even we do not see that. But we as audience are left with a lingering anxiety also, if we think from the perspective of technological innovation and mechanization, that whether the bridge will someday break, like we are asking about whether the character of Paul will someday get another kind of livelihood, what is to be made out of him. We have to also think it from the perspective of the bridge. So this is something which comes up to my mind as well in the discussion on the analysis of the film. Hence, there is a very subtle and implicit opposition of the status quo developmental model. So this is one thing that I feel it is very much prominent. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Indra. Jyotirmoy, would you like to say something?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, sure. Please go ahead.
No, actually, no, what you can do, Geeta, maybe let the panel continue for a while. I just have entered. Let me also get some ideas what people are saying. Then I'll definitely get back.
Okay.
If that's okay.
Yeah. Okay. Any more questions? Were you able to hear the discussion till now, Jyotirmoy? Because I think I had specially invited Jyotirmoy for this session. He is from Assam. He teaches at Nehu. He's a professor in the Department of English at Nehu. And he has also initiated the discussion for an Assamese film for TFO, Bulbul Can Sing. So thank you for logging in, Jyotirmoy.
Thanks, Geeta. I'll just coming in.
Yeah, please. Yeah, I think you should just go ahead. There's no one. Were you able to hear the discussion until now?
Not exactly. I just could get few of that. If there are some other speakers, let them speak. Then I shall get in.
I don't think anyone else is. Yeah, please just go ahead, Jyotirmoy. Please go ahead.
No, there's nothing much actually. This is a significant film, Hkhagoroloi, Bohu, and it basically about it in a very subtle way critiques the whole idea of development in a way, how development in fact hampers the very fundamentals of living within a kind of system where ecology, its landscape are very integral to the entire experience of living. And quite significantly, around that area only, a very new bridge has come, in fact. A very big bridge, Bogiville. So it has definitely turned the boatman somewhat redundant. And the whole discourse of development is one of the major kind of narrative that in fact tries to make living with nature somewhat primitive, or even not even not at par with modernism. So many questions in fact this particular film brings in, how one should negotiate with this particular paradox, whether there should be development, whether one should live with a kind of a rudimentary living, how one lives at a kind of rudimentary level. All these issues have been actually Jahanabhava tried to touch upon. The story, the novel also brings in those aspects as Indra has just the script. So these are some of the very quick observations I just wanted to make at the moment about this particular film. And there was another sequel to that, that was Halodia Sorai about Hankai. That is also by Homen Borgohain. That is that's a novel. And there also that same kind of a theme, in fact, continues. That is degeneration, or you can say uh, tragic decline, I would say, of rural living, the new kind of challenges that one encounters. But the bigger question is, what can be an ethical stand? What can be an ethical position that one can really take? For example, one needs development. Bridge is, of course, a metaphor here. One needs development, but at the same time, how to address the other aspects of intimate living with nature. So that is another aspect that we perhaps need to problematize. And similarly, in the other film by Johannabur again, in that Halodia Sorai about Hankai, the same kind of issues actually recur. So these are some of the themes that, in that point in time, actually uh, made people to think of. And at the end of the day, we after the movie, one feels uh, the kind of inadequacy of the parameters of development. That is one way of looking at it. Then secondly, one also thinks that perhaps it was not necessary. Again, from the larger perspective, another and different kind of position, we think this is again necessary. These are the paradoxical issues. That's why it remains a kind of quite an open-ended sort of film. These are some of my quick observations just I wanted to share with you people on this platform. Geeta.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jyotirmoy. Any more responses? Thank you for bringing up this question of ecology and nature, Jyotirmoy. I don't know if it is, dealt with in a very explicit manner in the film, but yes, it's definitely part of the subtext, because I don't think it comes up anywhere in the film, although it is there at a subterranean level, because any development, somehow seems to necessarily be at the cost of an ecological balance.
Geeta, can I add a point?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, so thank you so much to Professor Pradhan and to you. That's exactly what I wanted to say as well, So I'm sure many of us have read Elizabeth Colbert, Sixth Extinction, the climate movement. She's also got one, Under the White Sky. So exactly as Professor was pointing out, these very central tenets of what does development actually mean. And given that, so also the term socialism, which now has to be put in quotation marks. So even the left in its classical phase was carbon-based. And in a sense, kind of pushing through a notion of development, which was in a sense as as destructive. So I think the climate question and the ecological point that Professor introduced is critical and is in some ways asking the most profound questions of our times, right? And today, when you have people, whether it's Bill McCabe, Naomi Klein, whatever, talking precisely about this whole indigenous memory, a model of development, because we're now reaching critical tipping points. And this is exactly, not exactly, but perhaps tangentially, what also this so-called reference to the subaltern historians was about. And they point to the fact that in his classical phase, there was actually not very much difference. They were both carbon-based. They were both in some ways blind to many of these philosophical kind of issues, and therefore also this whole north-south divide and the dams, the damming of rivers in the global south, and how in that, so the costs for us have been much, much greater. Yeah, so I don't know if I'm saying coherent things, but I sense that the point that the professor made was really, really critical, and that you kind of, emphasized as well.
Yes,
Thanks.
Dr. Moy.
Oh no, just yeah. That is what that is how perhaps we can look at this kind of cinematic text. What I think Indra Sankar was speaking about. Like, for example, I know this is a very tangible kind of experience, especially in the Northeast, that there has always been one particular segment of people who'd always be eternally engaged in some kind of a protest against this kind of developmental initiatives surrounding a river, basically, like that of now. There's big dams are being proposed, and these are also being constructed in the upper Subansiri, Arunachal Pradesh, which is going to, if it happens, is going to change the entire river ecosystem in the Assam plains. One example I've just gave, it might be a little diversion from the film. That is the River Tista. River Tista is also a major river in Sikkim, and Tista is now known for the Tista barrage. That is a dam again, the Tista barrage. There's a major development because of the barrage. The whole of Siliguri is a major industrial or commercial hub in North Bengal. They get power supply. Now, when one drives to Sikkim now, they can see the canal through which river used to flow, and the entire river bed is fully dry. You can see only rocks, and when you just go up by the bank of that Tista River, you shall have only dusts, and you can see how a river can be, very systematically killed. So this is, but apparently and scientifically and in terms of this development discourses, development logic, it was one of the best things to have done, that the whole power supply is possible because of the Tista barrage. At the same time, there is no marine life, the birds are not there. Trucks would be right in the middle of the river, and they would be going for sand mining. Also, they would be putting other kind of like the tables and everything that they'll put on the trucks. So now it becomes a kind of constant supplier of construction materials, the river. Okay, it's no longer a kind of supplier of life as such. So this is how how development narrative and development discourses, development logicalities, in fact, at times is very seductive. We tend to get seduced by development logic, but when it comes to our immediate living, it has a devastating kind of effect, which gets again subdued by the overpowering narrative of this big development. What she was speaking about, the logic of socialism, how big anything big developmental. These are the temples of modern India or temple of modern time can really cause a huge amount of havoc, huge amount of devastations, not only to the ecology, even to the culture, even to the imaginations.
Yeah, thank you, Jyotirmoy. Any more comments, questions? Okay. If there are no more, then we will end this session here with a huge thank you to Indra. You have done 4 sessions for us the entire month, and made an excellent curation. The idea of the river-centric film itself was a really fascinating idea. So thank you very much for that. And thank you all for logging in. Next week is another festival. We will announce it soon. Thank you. Good night. Have a nice Sunday.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Geeta.
Indra.
Thank you.
Indra, what a
joining.
fine
And thanks a
selection.
lot
Thank
for
you.
having taken up this film. Thank you.
Good night. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Night.